Considering how excited I am about today's subject matter, I'm kind of surprised it's taken me this long to film this video. I don't know, I was just moving at my own pace today. I hope you had a good self-care Sunday. So it's Angels Among Us Day, and I was told by the voices in my head earlier this week that we should talk about Criss Angel, who is literally my childhood hero. But before I dive into Criss Angel, I was just sitting here like scrolling on Pinterest, like relaxing, whatever, and a quote came up and it says, "Cast yourself, you are the spell." And that is kind of Criss Angel's whole philosophy. If I don't even remember how I like first discovered this man. I just know I was quite young, like maybe in like grade 4 or grade 5, and he had like a show on A&E at the time, and it was just called like Mind Freak or whatever, and I started seeing like commercials for it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool, like let me watch it. And so I started watching like this grown man doing all these like crazy freaking stunts. Like in the first season, he gets like fish hooks put in his back and he like flies over, like I think it's the Grand Canyon. Mind you, I've flown over the Grand Canyon in a helicopter, not with fish hooks hanging out of my back. He's a master illusionist. He's a really cool guy. I've seen his Cirque du Soleil show in Vegas. I've seen a lot of Cirque du Soleil shows in Vegas. And this is actually when I kind of stopped giving a fuck about Criss Angel, because I don't know, maybe I just like, I wasn't impressed or whatever, I don't know. But now everything comes full circle, and this man is very, I admire his life philosophy so much, and I think that we can learn a lot from Criss Angel. And I'm realizing now, well, I mean, I realized a lot of things, but, you know, like when I started talking about people, I didn't fully intend that, like, this is my third video I've done. I've only talked about men so far, but what I'm noticing is, I mean, particularly in the last 2 videos, this is really evident, but like the subjects I pick are people who are very balanced in their masculine and feminine energies, and that is really how I've been trying to approach life, like for the last few months. Like it's about being masculine and feminine at the same time, and not even just like in your external appearance, but I would argue that like Dennis Rodman and Criss Angel are both examples of like men who are not afraid to like play around with fashion, you know, and like paint their nails or like try out things that people might consider more feminine or girly or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so they're comfortable in that side of themselves, which I think like is an important place to be. But also just like so to really embody masculine and feminine energy, like, so Dennis is an example of someone who maybe sometimes like with having issues with substance abuse leans too much into that feminine side of himself, where he's just very much like, okay, like I don't need to have structure. But like with Criss Angel, it's like he has this deep feminine inner knowing, and then he has the masculine ability to apply that and be disciplined and be structured, and he does amazing things because of it. So at some point when I was a little girl, I bought his autobiography, and I mean, you can tell like it's just kind of in like rough shape. I've read this so many times when I was little, and I mean, I just picked it up recently. I found it in like a box downstairs, and I was just kind of like skimming through the chapters in here. So one chapter he has is specifically called Mind, Body, and Spirit. So I reread this and I like highlighted some things I want to talk about first of all before I like dive too much into like my personal experience with Criss Angel. But so again, Mind, Body, Spirit, even if you just watch the first season of a show, it's not on streaming anywhere, I paid for it on Apple TV. That is his whole philosophy. He says that if the mind, body, and spirit are working together in unison, anything is possible. Anything is possible, and that is, I can confirm. Okay, I can confirm. So just some of the things I highlighted in here, he said, the mind has an overwhelming power to infiltrate and influence every aspect of our lives. Its potential is limitless. When the mind, body, and spirit work together and harmoniously, anything is possible. I truly believe the mind controls every aspect of the body. Your body is a slave to it. So if you're a positive thinker, your body is going to react in a positive way to any circumstance or situation. If you're a negative thinker, your body will cave to those negative thoughts. I have been on both sides of this coin. Mind you, I was reading this book over and over and over and over and over again as an 11-year-old, and I was like, it felt to me, I was like, this is true. This man knows what he's talking about. But I didn't see any of the adults in my real life. Like, I didn't have any real world examples of anyone embodying this. So this philosophy got lost on me. You know, I wish Criss Angel's influence was enough, but unfortunately it wasn't. I got lost in the sauce for a while, but I came back to him. So Criss also says, I believe you are what you think. What you feed your mind, your body will follow and believe. Even the most brilliant medicine in the world can't cure the body if the patient's mind refuses to cooperate. The brain is often mistakenly seen as a separate entity from the body. Believing in the power of our mind requires a belief in that which we cannot see, faith or spirit. The more you understand about yourself, the closer you will come to tapping into your own resources to strengthen your mind, your body, and your spirit. So that is also true, right? So it's like Criss Angel was able to do these things, right? And fully understand himself and then like do something amazing because of it. Whereas like me, like I could read this information as an 11-year-old, but then it's like I can't just follow in his path and like do everything he did to understand myself. It's like I had to go on my own little journey of self-understanding so that now I can come back here and be a powerful fucking being who has her mind, body, and spirit working in unison as often as possible. I mean, I'm not perfect. I have a freaking tummy ache right now. I'm battling with my flesh real bad. But I'm still here. I'm showing up in mind and spirit to talk to you about this. And then he just says, how many times have you been in a bad mood and one song on the radio turns your day around? If music can bring levity to a difficult situation, then surely an act of impossibility can do the same. So, you know, like a lot of creatives, like the most profound musicians, like their mission is to create some sort of art form, right? You know, and it's just like, if it's authentic to them, it's them expressing themselves, telling their story, just telling like stories of what they've witnessed. And then, you know, it's like they create it for themselves, but then also in the hope that other people will resonate with it. And just like if they're very passionate about what they do, like that is not supposed to inspire you to do what they are doing. Seeing someone else living out their fullest potential and being like a holistic human being, that is supposed to inspire you to be holistic in your own way, to do what you are here to do. Not everyone is going to be a mind freak. But like I can't do a single fucking magic trick, okay? But I would say I consider myself a mind freak 120% because I understand what it means like for my mind to betray my body and my spirit. I understand what it means for my body to betray my mind and my spirit. Did I just say that? No, I think I said mind first, but see, like for example, like if your mind betrays your body, it's just like let's say when I'm at like peak performance, like I'm in a really good routine of just like, you know, balance between like work, self-care, like friendship, like I'm moving my body, I'm eating nutritiously, whatever. But then let's say I just wake up and I'm having like someone plants a seed of doubt in my head. Maybe I saw something negative on social media, maybe I'm surrounded by negative influences, whatever it may be. And then your mind can start working against you. And then once your mind falls out, then it's easy enough for you to be like, oh, it doesn't matter if I go to the gym today or not. It doesn't matter if I do these things for myself. Because you're not as committed. Like your mind does not believe, you lose that faith. And so faith does not even just have to be in God. Like faith, you can find faith in God through faith in yourself. Even if you're not a believer in God, you can, if you just like do the next right thing and start keeping promises to yourself, then you will attain this feeling. Like Criss talks about this, I'm gonna read to you, but like just this feeling of being on purpose. It's like it's like embodied. When you are embodied, it's your flow state. It is one of the most beautiful feelings you can feel, and I'm so grateful. Like I have experienced this in life, and I've experienced the total opposite of this too, where I've been just like a chaotic fucking clusterfuck. And that was when I did not have faith and I leaned into drugs and substances, and I didn't care about people like Criss Angel. You know, I had no good role models. I had no one who was living in this way. My only role models were people that were living in sin. So what did I do? Naturally, I lived in sin. And that just means like living unconsciously. So he also reminds us that the mind cannot distinguish between a real or an imagined event, right? So if you're the kind of person, and like I come from women who love to worry, and I used to be a big worrier too, but if you're sitting there expending so much of your beautiful energy just worrying and worrying and worrying about like a made up scenario that hasn't even happened yet, like the mind cannot, the mind is processing those thoughts as though you already endured that trauma that you were only imagining. That is how powerful your mind is. So it is so important to really filter the thoughts that are circulating through your brain. So Criss says, this mind-body connection has been talked about a lot by many people in various fields. When I talk about it, it takes on a whole new dimension. And if you watch his show, you will really understand this. There is simply no room for negativity when I am performing. I can't allow myself to think morbid thoughts. If I do, those thoughts can run amok. I have to be very conscious about controlling them, or they will infiltrate my entire being and have the opposite effect I need to complete a demonstration. Yes. We've all had bad thoughts about what might happen, things that could go terribly wrong. We've all played a morbid game of what if. And that doesn't serve you. That it does nothing to serve you. I mean, it's always good to be conscious of what could happen. But then it's just like, then you give it to God, right? Like, you, as long as you are taking all the precautions necessary, like, most of us are not going out here and doing like otherworldly stunts, like freaking living through building implosions or like burying ourselves alive. But like, the reason Criss Angel does what he does is so that you can see that he can do literally the impossible, and then maybe you can take action towards the things that like your psyche has planted in your head, like, oh, this is impossible. And sometimes that can be as simple as fucking waking up and brushing your teeth. If Criss Angel can survive a building implosion, you can get out of bed and brush your teeth and like just do the bare minimum. I promise you can. You just probably need to tap into sources of inspiration that remind you of your power, and seeing other people in their power is a great way to do that. And so, you know, in this book, he kind of just talks about like different demonstrations he's done and like when his mind was not working like for him and when it was. And so he says, I was compelled to call upon my entire being, my mind, body, and spirit to work as one. When they all come together, there's an indescribable sense of positive energy and an overwhelming desire to accomplish whatever you set to do. When this happens, it's downright spiritual. I felt complete. In fact, I was strangely at peace. If something were to go wrong, it would have been okay. I was in a moment of unconditional acceptance. The outcome doesn't matter. Those are the moments I live for. If the mind, body, and spirit are not in top form, you will never be in top form. And actually, I wanted to pause to talk about this because I think, so I don't watch a lot of like political news like straight up, so I just kind of like get bits and pieces from like whatever, but I know that like RFK is, you know, a big figure in like American politics right now, and I believe he's said something along the lines of like, America is never going to be like a top performing economic nation again so long as people's health is in the fucking toilet. And I agree with that 1,000,000%. Because, and I've said this before, like, if you look at the state of the country right now, who is running it? A bunch of buffoons, okay? Like, the government has never looked like this. And government basically just reflects the state of, like, the collective. If the collective was not in such a state of buffoonery, there would not be buffoons running the country, okay? If people were healthy, wealthy, and wise, then they would have a government that would, like, reflect that. I mean, in Canada, I think we're supposed to have an election coming up here, so I'm curious to see like what's gonna change. But we have a buffoon running shit over here too. So I mean, like, it's just a bunch of buffoonery. Everyone needs to step up a little bit and like be more aligned. We need people like Criss Angel in government. Maybe we need me in government. Oh, and so he says, if I'm carrying emotional baggage around, I have to clear my mind of whatever that baggage is and focus on whatever I need to do to get through the task at hand. I have to mentally shove that stuff right out of my head. And they say, like, you know, an idle mind is the devil's playground. And throughout the winter, I really kind of experienced this because, like, all through the late summer and fall, I was, like, in the gym every day, like, walking for miles or, like, you know, like, outside going for walks. And I was doing that pretty much up until, like, December. And then I broke my toe. And then it got, like, really fucking cold out. And I just, like, I don't know, I stopped going to the gym. And, like, I would still do, again, like, casual workouts at home or whatever. But I just, like, my body fell out of that, like, mind, body, spirit process. And so the past few days I've been like going on like really long walks and stuff, or just like, you know, making it a point to like move my body, and my brain feels so much better. Like the amount of like elevation in my brain, I can't even begin to tell you. It is phenomenal. Endorphins are better than any drug you will do, and I have done quite a few, and almost as good as sex. I stand by that. And he says, when I'm in the zone, I don't want to hear anything but my own thoughts. It's critical for me to be in the right place, in the right state of mind. When I'm not connected, it's a recipe for disaster. So you need to take that seriously. Like, if you feel, like, if you, even like me sometimes, like, I'll sit down and do some work and it's just like my mind, like, I have really bad monkey mind, or I'm just like focused on something negative. Then one of my favorite go-tos is like, okay, let me get up and go for a walk and get some energy moving, and then maybe I'll feel better. or like let me like take positive action towards something else on my to-do list that doesn't have to do with work. And I know obviously like a lot of people have a job they actually have to go to, and like they can't just fucking like put it down or whatever, but it's like you, so then start building your toolbox, be it breath work, be it affirmations. In my We Accept the Love We Think We Deserve video, I went through a whole list of things, tools you can use that will help you just do better. Okay. And then so also in this chapter, Criss talked about like a stunt, like he had this idea, and he's the kind of person that like he really doesn't like to give up on his ideas. He always wants to find a way to make it happen. But there was one thing that like he's like, my body and mind and spirit, like they did not feel aligned about this, and so he ended up like changing it to something else, whatever. And so he just kind of talked about the impacts of that. He's like so many things in my life, something that was supposed to happen didn't come to fruition. I thank God for that. I've learned to roll with the punches, and I always end up in a much better place than I would have been if my original plans had worked out. Sometimes you have to let a situation play out. Look at it, study it, analyze it, and learn from it. Make it work for you. Use it to your advantage. My mom always told me, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not, it'll never happen. Don't worry about it. And that just reminded me too, like one of my mutuals on Tumblr reblogged something yesterday. I think it was like, wow, like, you know, it's like people really fall asleep like right away at night, like you don't have anything on your mind. And literally what came to me instantly, I was like, give it to God and like get some rest. Like he'll figure it out. He wants you to rest. It can all be so simple if you have faith that a higher power will help you figure out the answer tomorrow, because there's no need for you to worry, because then you're not going to be at peak form the next day. How are you going to stay dangerous if you're always worrying? And so the end of this chapter says, I am always striving to be the very best I can be, which is a total circle jerk for someone like myself, since I know I can always be better. Perfection is impossible, so the pursuit of perfection is a constant, never-ending, and infinite chase. And I think that's kind of an example of where he might lean too much into that masculine energy, right? Because I think when you're balanced, it's like there has to be that balance between like being and doing. Right? And so I think, you know, now that he's a bit older, I feel like Criss Angel's probably in his 50s now. Like, he has kids and stuff. Like, he's slowed down. He's not out here doing, like, stunts and illusions and stuff like he used to. Like, his purpose has changed. But, so another thing I want to talk about, the next chapter in this book is about his dad. His dad died of an illness when Criss was, like, pretty young. And so he was actually talking about his dad in here. He says, for most of his life, Dad was the picture of strength and good health. He understood the science of nutrition and physical activity even before it became fashionable. As a young man, he was a bodybuilder featured in many muscle magazines. He was a Golden Gloves boxing champ and a Pennsylvania state wrestling champion. His athleticism and physique were always important to him. He had the chance to play football on scholarship for Penn State, but chose to take care of his parents instead of attending college. Family was everything to my dad. He was such a strong man in both character and physical strength. Throughout his life and during his illness, he continued to train like an elite athlete. I think that kept him very much alive longer than anyone expected. Remarkably, the day after the cancer surgery on his stomach, Dad got up from his hospital bed and began walking so he could quickly rebuild his strength. He always had such a positive outlook. Dad had a marvelous attitude about connecting the mind, body, and spirit, something that was very forward-thinking for the time. I watched him and marveled at his attempts to conquer the disease that was eating away at his life. I absorbed his spirit into mine. He amazed me each and every day. There were some really rough days during my father's illness, but he always smiled. He lit up a room. When anyone asked how he was doing, Dad would always answer, I'm doing great. Other people talked to him about their personal issues, and instead of thinking of himself, he reached out to help by talking to them and motivating them to change their circumstances. He tried to live the final years, months, weeks, and days of his life as if nothing were wrong. He never once gave in to the notion of his mortality. He never complained about pain or discomfort. His motivation was simple. He had a grandchild on the way. At the time, my brother JD and his wife were expecting a baby. My father was determined to live long enough to meet his first grandchild, and he did. My father used to say, illness is a part of life, son. He taught me to appreciate the people you love and to cherish each moment because you don't know how many moments you're going to have. I think about those words every day, especially those days I'm putting my life on the line by choice. My father didn't have a choice about dying. His disease was irreversible. He had to live knowing he could die at any given moment. That's why I don't fear death. I don't worry about dying at all. Death is a great stimulus for the imagination. I watched my father live a peaceful life even in his final moments. Our family is very spiritual, but my father was an extremely religious man. He had faith and believed you can move mountains if you set your mind to it. If you have enough belief in yourself, there's nothing you can't do, especially when you're willing to work for it. His faith gave my dad comfort that allowed him to cope and deal with his failing health. Watching my father die was agonizing for me. It made me take a step back and assess my choices in life. Let's face it, everybody is dealt a different hand. It's all about how we choose to play that hand. Some people die in their sleep, others get hit by a car, while others attempt death-defying stunts that sometimes, not often, but sometimes can go very, very wrong. Choices. Life is full of choices. Okay, we'll stop that there because, I mean, he goes on to talk a lot more about his dad. But so Criss wrote this in like the early 2000s. And since then, what I think is very interesting is he had a family of his own. I think he was married once before in like early 2000s, but then now he has a different wife and he has 2 young sons. And one of his sons actually had cancer. So I firmly believe, so if we go back to the story of Bruce and Michael Rivers, right? Like when I heard that story about Michael's death, and how Bruce was able to come back from that and still go on to build something amazing and just like be an embodied person, really just be a lighthouse. Like that's what we need on this earth, is more lighthouses. I knew, like I was like astrologically, karmically, like this was just always going to happen the way it was. And I bet the same is true of this story with Criss Angel, because him witnessing his father go through that illness, you know, really shaped him and made him into this person. And then now he has this son, right, who's going through the same thing. And I believe like his son has like been in remission or is like healthy now, whatever. But still, to watch not only your dad fight this illness, and fight it with all his fucking might and not survive, and then to have this little boy to watch him do that. It's like, you know, if you didn't have a dad who could really like back you and support you and teach you those things. I've been reading the book Think and Grow Rich, and in one of the early chapters, like it was originally written by Napoleon Hill, and then someone else took it and rewrote it for like more modern times. And the person who rewrote it for more modern times, I can't remember their name, but I'm pretty sure. So they had a son who was born without ears, and this man, he was just like so enamored with the belief that like if you believe something, like it can be true. So he just like, he knew, he's like, no, my son is going to live as normal of a life as possible. And by dang it, you know, from what I read in the book, his son was able to hear and speak and do things that a person who is born without hearing equipment should not be able to do. But they stayed solutions oriented, you know. And so that really what it is, that's sorry, that's really what it is focusing on solutions and looking at the bright side of life and knowing your power, knowing that anything is possible if you just believe. And it's so funny because King Henry, like a few months ago, I went to a Starbucks that I don't usually go to, and there was a chiropractor beside it, and they had a sign in the window and it said, anything is possible if you believe. And I took a picture of it and I sent it to King Henry, but then I realized after, it actually says anything is possible if you be live. They spelled believe wrong, right? So anything is possible if your mind, body, and spirit are working in unison, which is what? Being live, being conscious, embodying Christ consciousness. Anything is possible if you do that. That is how God creates miracles, through conscious humans. You have to be a channel of the divine. But if you do not want to be conscious, God cannot channel through you. You are resisting the process. You know how it feels to trust the process when you're doing it right? I posted this on Tumblr today. I have a whole series of how it feels to trust the process. And a lot of them are just, you know, a person fucking moping around and being miserable. Because that's how it feels to trust the process when you're resisting it. But when you are trusting the process and the process is flowing through you, it is like you are levitating. It is exactly what Criss Angel described. It is a godlike feeling. So if you want to feel like God, get more on purpose. Okay? Criss, I love you. I honestly, as a journalist, my dream interview, I would love to interview him. That would mean so much to me. But I have been, rewatching old Mind Freak episodes. And actually, I wrote a list of quotes down on my phone too. So let's just read these really quickly before I let you go, because we're hitting like the 25-minute mark. Okay. So he says, magic today is not popular culture. I'm hoping to change that. And then so also he kind of says what his definition of magic is. When you're able to touch someone on an emotional level, that to me is magic. So that is how I feel too, like me putting these videos out here, me being able to express myself so eloquently, and me being able to like connect the dots between all these things. That is magic. That is a gift. And if you are receptive to being touched by my words, to letting what I am sharing flow through you and help you grow, that is magic too. He says, I don't think that there's anything in life you should fear. I think you should confront your fears and grow as a person. When you feel pain, you know you're alive. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I mean, that's not a Criss Angel original, but it is just true. And he says, I've worked my whole life in trying to create an art form that would please me and in turn please others. And I hope they have an appreciation and sense of my work ethic and my passion, whether they love me or hate me. So even if you hate him, he does not care. He just wants you to be able to receive what he has to offer. And actually, on another note, what I thought was really interesting is I was curious like what Criss Angel's take on sobriety is. So I was like doing some Googling and I found a tweet from 2011. And he says, I'm very much against drugs. I found my cousin Michael dead from #drugs. I don't and will never do drugs. They destroy lives. But can we talk about that for a second? Because was it not like Bruce Rivers, his son Michael, died of a drug overdose. Criss Angel also found someone named Michael dead of a drug overdose. I think that is very, very interesting. And also, I love this GQ headline. It's the real life diet of Criss Angel, who is 51 and able to do the splits. So, if you want to be 51 and able to do the splits, I suggest you at the very least consider what a holistic lifestyle can do for you. That doesn't mean you need to go and radically change your life and do things like all kinds of like ass backwards, but maybe you just need to start. First of all, look at your life. Really look at your life and say, what am I doing that isn't working for me? What am I still trying to like push forward with that like maybe my mind is resisting, my body is resisting, my spirit is resisting? Like ask yourself, like, how am I holding these separate elements of myself back? Or am I seeing them as separate entities? How can I bring all of this together more? Because for me, like, I have bipolar, right? So I used to have to rely on medication to keep me stable. But then now I genuinely think the reason why I was able to get off of lithium and remain stable and actually like become, I feel like I'm doing better without it, you know what I mean? Is because of my decision to be conscious. If I were to go back to being unconscious, if I were to start drinking again and doing all kinds of like whatever, just giving away my energy haphazardly and just not having a vision, not having a purpose, that would be a disaster. But I am a conscious human being with purpose. I know what I'm here to do, and so no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Okay, happy Sunday. Thank you for listening to me. I love Criss Angel so much. He makes my inner child so happy. Like, I swear to you, I had every episode downloaded on TiVo. My parents were like, can we delete this? I'm like, no. I love them. And I'm so grateful, actually, that, like, you know, in adulthood, he came back to me. Like, look at this absolute fucking freak. I love him so much. He's such a great person. He's one of a kind. And I like people who are one of a kind. So, I don't know who we're going to talk about next Sunday, but I will be back because I'm liking doing these videos. And I see our channel is growing, like, slowly but surely. So if you're new here, welcome. And I'm really happy to have you. And if you have any thoughts on things I say, share them in the comments. And if not, keep being great. Okay, mind freak. Love you. Stay ready.